The Packers look to go 2-0 versus the Washington Commanders on Thursday Night Football. We will tell you why the Packers will win this primetime matchup.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
Welcome in another episode of Sounds Gouda. Thank you everybody for coming back and taking a listen to us. Of course, and as always, my name is Rob Ralph. Next to me is my best friend, Jordan Olson. Thank you to any new and returning listeners. We are excited to talk Packers ball with you each and every week. We do have new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please make sure to give us a like, sub, and follow us on those platforms. We are still running our promo, and we've already gotten a couple giveaways for some new Sounds Gouda hats. But every new 50 subscribers on YouTube, you do need to be a public subscriber. We will be continuing to give away some Sounds Gouda swag, and that next one will be number 700. So make sure that you get entered in for that. We have also unlocked super chats, super stickers, and super thanks, and as is another way that you can support and interact with our channel. Jordan, quick, before we get into the Packers-Commanders game here on Thursday Night Football, let's touch on the Christian Watson extension and what this means for the Packers.
Yeah, I just think it's a really good deal for both sides. I'm very excited that Christian Watson will be a part of this team for at least one more season. It's a 1 year, $13.25 million extension. I think it looks like it adds a little bit of base money, a little bit of cap money to this year, which is okay because there's plenty of room left next year with the rollover cap and the way that they did set the Parsons deal. So, not all full details are out about the contract yet, so we'll see what that looks like. One way or another, we know Russ Ball's got the financials of it all figured out, so I'm not concerned. But we were on the show earlier in the offseason saying that the Christian Watson contract or future could look a lot like the Jordan Love deal, which is basically like a 50-year option. We give you some money and some guarantee, more than you've made in your rookie deal, so you have something to gain out of it and you can stay right here as a Green Bay Packer, rehab, be a part of this team. And I think it's good all the way around. And I'll be very excited to see him come off that PUP list and maybe play as early as that Week 5 game against the Bengals. So I don't know. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, it's good. It's really, really good for the Packers. Christian Watson, where he's quietly one of our best field stretchers on this team. He's also one of the best run blockers on this team as well. Puts a lot of energy and effort in that. Obviously, the team values that. Matt LaFleur values that in this offense. So I'm excited to see what him and Matthew Golden and the rest of these offensive weapons can do for us. I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah, and he's a weapon, right? I think he's averaged like 21 yards a reception last year. Just a complete different, a difference maker when he's healthy. And, somebody too that's on Matt LaFleur's leadership council, a pretty good chance that, he could have been one of those team captain guys, for Matt LaFleur if he maybe would have been on the field early this season. I'm not sure if you have to be, suited up or on the field to wear that C on your chest. But I'm sure he was on the short list for that team. So, but, more about that in the future. We're excited for Christian Watson to be on this team. But tonight, as you listen to this episode, we have a big game against the Washington Commanders. The Packers are currently 3.5-point favorites at home. So Vegas is giving the Packers a little extra juice in addition to that 1.5 point kind of home advantage. Both teams are 1-0. Both teams have Super Bowl aspirations, with the Commanders making it to the NFC Championship game last year and kind of flopping against the eventual, Super Bowl champs and the Eagles. Obviously a short week. The Packers get a little bit of a bump there because they don't have to travel. Both teams will be, the Packers will be wearing their winter white uniforms, which I still think that's crazy. It's September. I think they're trying to rebrand that to wear white and unite. So everybody show up and wear white at the football game tonight. But what are you most excited for in this game, Rob? What are some of the things you're looking at? What are some of the other storylines from the Commanders in general that you're kind of focusing on going into this game?
Well, they had a really solid Week 1 win against the Giants at home. Of course, JAYDEN Daniels, he's in Week 2. Very, very good. He's another really good running quarterback, very mobile. So, we're going to have to time out our specific times to be aggressive on defense when we want to blitz, when we don't, when we want to try and contain and keep them in the pocket. Jeff Hafley, I know, was talking about that a little bit, just about some of the challenges that Jayden Daniels can present if he gets out of the pocket. They did get Deebo Samuel from the 49ers. They still have Scary Terry, and they got Brown over there, have a decent tight end, and Zach Ertz, who's obviously a little bit older, but he scored a touchdown against the Giants, so he can still perform, and he does pretty well for this. They do have Laramie Tunsil there at left tackle. The rest of the offensive line, there is some concerns there, just along with the Lions as well in the interior part of that. Not too scared of their offensive line. I was actually a little surprised that the vaunted New York Giants defensive line couldn't attack that a little bit better with Abdul Carter and Lawrence over there. But yeah, Jayden Daniels, they're going to spread it out. They're going to try and hit you quick. So I would expect, and I was talking about this last night too as well, but a lot more of what they did against the Lions, rush 4, disguise a lot of blitzes, have a lot of unique things that they do, and cover a lot with 7, and hopefully you can get Jayden Daniels to do a lot more check downs and rallying to the football and tackling, playing a lot of cover 2. Can't let him beat you deep. So you can't let him beat you deep, obviously, and you can't let Jayden Daniels beat him with your legs. So those are some of the things I'm looking over as far as the offensive side of their ball. Their defensive side, I think they have the oldest roster, if I'm not mistaken. They have Luvu and Bobby Wagner, who's got to be like 50 years old now. He's extremely old, but he's still playing football. I would love to see the Packers take advantage and some mismatch with that linebacking core. See if you can get a mismatch on a tight end or a slot wide receiver or something. I think that there's some primetime advantages of taking advantage of some of their slow linebacking crew. And then you'll see Lattimore. Lattimore's over there. They paid him handsomely. And then one of the guys we were talking about in the draft process, Trey Amos. They got Trey Amos there as a cornerback too. So he's looking to make his week 2 for the Commanders. So those are a couple of the notes and things that I was thinking of. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big storyline, of course, this is a star-driven league, but I think you got 2 of the youngest and highest ceiling quarterbacks going head to head in this game, right? And of course, the old adage as well, Jordan Love not going really head to head with Jayden Daniels because he's not throwing the ball against him per se. But, we'll talk about this a little later in score predictions. I do think that this is a game that's going to be won through the air. And, there are good running backs on both sides of the ball. You've got kind of this rookie phenom, fantasy football phenom, Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt, which is getting a lot of hype right now. Austin Eckler's a little banged up. But the Commanders, and you mentioned Jayden Daniels' running ability, but the Commanders can certainly beat you through the ground or on the ground. But Jayden Daniels, he has an arm on him too. He's proven to be an extremely accurate passer through the, early part of his young career. And it will be on the Packers pass rush to make him uncomfortable in this game. I think you said you were surprised that the Giants didn't do a little better. I think they did sack Jayden Daniels 3 times, which I don't think is too bad given his mobility. But I think we're going to have to probably at least match that in this game to make him uncomfortable. I think he only had like a QBR of like 54.9 in the last game. So threw the ball 30 times, had 19 completions, 1 touchdown. So, he is kind of getting into early season form as well. But it's week 2. The preseason's over. So it will really be time for both Jordan Love and Jayden Daniels to kind of, show that they're ready to attack through the airs. Yeah, I was on another, I was actually on a Washington Commanders podcast last night, Tuesday night. You can go back and find a live, shout out to Juan Gotti Talking Sports. He puts on a really nice show. He's got a really nice following over there covering the Washington Commanders. So go check out that live. It's on his YouTube, Juan Gotti Talking Sports. Definitely give you some more insight about what this Commanders team looks like right now and what they're going to bring. But, you mentioned that kind of defensive back room in Trey Amos, and he's pretty high on Trey Amos. He's already been inserted as a starter, and they've got, I think, second-year player Mike Sanderstrill out of University of Michigan there, and then Marshawn Lattimore. So he was having a hard time kind of, finding a way for these Packers receivers, which in his opinion are very young and unproven. They don't have a Scary Terry. They don't have an Amon-Ra St. Brown. So he thinks that's advantage Commanders. But
Hmm.
what do you think in regards to these Packers wide receivers and that matchup versus that secondary group, Rob?
Yeah, I'm not that scared of Lattimore. He's a solid cornerback. Sanastrello, he's not too bad either. They graded out in the low 60s for this first game. I think that the Packers, well, they might not have like a absolute alpha. They distributed the ball to 10 different people in week 1. So if you're gonna pick one, you're gonna have to cover the other, and eventually you're gonna get a mismatch, which is what I was alluding to with Bobby Wagner and Luvu. For as good as Wagner can still be against the run, he's not the fastest linebacker in the world. He is age 35, I believe, so you can hit him with a tight end and Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, if he can catch the ball and not stumble for once catching the ball. But yeah, Josh Jacobs, Chris Brooks, you got Golden, you got Savion Williams, you got Jaden Reed, you got Romeo Dobbs. I just think that we have so many options to where if they're locking down a few of these offensive players that we have, you can exploit some of these other matchups up against Martin, their safety, Luvu, Wagner, and create some good long extended plays that way. So that's my opinion, but I can definitely see where he's coming from. They do have a lot of good young cornerback talent. I think Sanastrill is still coming into his own. Trey Amos in second game. They got a lot of good future capital there as far as the cornerback room goes. So I can see what he means. But yeah, that's how I would take advantage of that um, as far as the secondary goes for them.
Rob, this might not be a bad time as we kind of, continue our key matchups conversation. We have some imagery from PFF's website where you can see some matchups. So again, if you're on YouTube or even Spotify, you can see the visuals there. But you can kind of see the base defensive package, and of course, this is kind of how PFF thinks it might be aligned. Obviously, that's just base. So, you're not going to have Sanders still on Golden and Lattimore on Dobbs every single snap. But just kind of an image of how those players played in the first game, their PFF grades, and what some of those matchups might look like. Remember for PFF, a grade of 60 is kind of a solid starter grade. Less than that, getting down into the 50s is considered more of a poor grade. 70 plus, they had a great game. They're having a great season so far. Anytime you're touching the 80s, you're talking about that Pro Bowl caliber type of season. So, one matchup that he was really talking to me about too, that, I guess I'm going to have to learn more about. I was kind of thinking this Washington Commanders defensive line was a place that had a lot of changeover. Juan Gotti thinks that that's a good thing. Really talked a lot about Javon Kinlaw and Kwity Paye and, how this is going to be a strength of that team. And, he kind of has a hard time believing as well that the Packers are going to be able to run the ball, especially on the inside. Against this Washington Commanders team. One area that he thought this team is kind of weak on the defensive side of the ball is their exterior pass rush. So, based on this graphic, what I see from name recognition, I mean, that is a place that we may look to take advantage with our experienced tackles if Zach Tom plays. And kind of attacking, those B gaps and C gaps with our run games.
Yeah, absolutely. They lost Dante Fowler Jr. They put a lot more capital in their secondary. They do have Miller over here and Armstrong. Obviously, Kinlaw and Payne, he does make a really good point about that. But if that is the case again, that'd be similar to what the Detroit Lions did. either with them blitzing or committing more men on the defensive line to be able to stop the run, then we just do the air raid attack again and be aggressive and take advantage of some of the matchups like I was alluding to from before. And I think that this is where you can have some success against the Washington Commanders. But yeah, we'll see if Zach Tom plays. Insert Darian Kennard, I would assume, would be the right tackle. Banks probably would be Jordan Morgan over their left guard, I believe, unless they want to do Ryan over their left guard and then maybe move Morgan over to right guard. But that's how I would assume it would play out. They held up pretty well, did pretty good in the run game. Sean Ryan quietly had himself a really, really good game, both in run blocking and pass blocking for the Packers. As you can see here, he was the highest graded Packer in week 1. So, yeah, I mean, if they end up doing that, then they're going to have to stop us and all our other offensive weapons that we can hurt you with. So,
And just a correction for any people who are, a little bit nitpicky, but I did mean Darren Payne as at that interior defensive lineman, not Kwity Paye. I think Kwity is a player that used to play for them or is more of a depth piece. But Darren Payne is a guy who had a really great game for them and a guy last week and a guy they expect to continue to be a foundation of the interior of that defensive front. So, I'm looking at this this graphic here, kind of this visual, depth chart. And I mean, we talked about Trey Amos. We are obviously very high on him on the show.
uh
I think we're going to be happy with Anthony Belton, but I think we would have all been thrilled if we would have taken Trey Amos with that second round pick and he would have been a Green Bay Packer. But, looking at this, you look like you are going to see some Matthew Golden versus Trey Amos this week. And if it plays out like that, it's going to be very interesting, as a Packers fan to see who gets the advantage in that matchup.
Yeah, and that's one of the ones I'm really, really excited for. Matthew Golden had 2 targets, 2 receptions, caught both those balls. But I was watching some of his other play from week 1, just his other route running abilities, whatever he's doing downfield, his run blocking. And that kid is going to be a star. So if this is an official welcome, get a few more targets. I love that matchup against Trey Amos this week.
Yep. And I think you mentioned what offensive line. I do think that Jordan Morgan will play left guard for Aaron Banks, and they'll leave Sean Ryan, who had a phenomenal week 1 game, right where he's at. So let's flip over to that defensive side of the ball for the Packers and talk about a couple of the key matchups there. But what are you thinking, Rob? Where can the Packers, take advantage and slow down this Washington Commanders defense or offense?
Well, they're like I was saying, you can't let Scary Terry and Brown beat you deep. They're both pretty fast. And then you kind of have that gadget, running back, hybrid, wide receiver, slot, plays sometimes on the outside, occasionally. More of a slot guy, move around. He can definitely hurt you. But man,
Is that Eckler you're talking about there, Rob?
Deebo Samuel.
Well, you're talking about Deebo. Okay. Yep.
Deebo Samuel. Yep. So I think that's where they could potentially give us some mismatches. If they do have him out there in base, he could definitely take advantage of maybe a McDuffie or a Walker in coverage. I do love Cooper out there though as well. He was obviously, you can see here, he was one of our highest graded in week 1, was really good in the run defense, was really good in coverage, really rallied to the football. The whole team did specifically. So I would assume that you're going to see a lot more Tampa 2, so cover 2, put that shell on them. I think that they're going to disguise a lot of blitzes. I'm not sure that you're going to see too much now that we have a Micah Parsons, an elite rusher, or he's going to try and get home with 4 more often than not, just to kind of tame out this really potent JAYDEN Daniels led offense with a lot of these weapons over there. So similar, like exactly what happened with the Lions. I believe they pressured and sent a blitz on 4 of the 44 dropbacks of Jared Goff. So they didn't really need to blitz as much as they did last year, to try and be able to get home, because you have some of these elite pass rushers over on this side. So, I expect that this defensive line, Wooden, Wyatt, who quietly had a really good game in run defense and had a sack, and was able to rush the passer as a 3 tech here, continues to have his strong performance into week 2, and can take advantage of, Allegretti, Vidish, and Coleman here on the interior, and maybe even a Conley Jr. over here on the right-hand side. Laramie Tunsil is elite. He's very, very good. That's one of their strong sides, is over there on the left tackle. So, if it's Gary or Parsons over there, I expected them to have a lot of success, because they just went up against Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell, and really put some fits on them too. And I would consider Penei Sewell probably the best right tackle in the league.
Yeah, I think that Parsons versus Connerly Jr. matchup, and Connerly Jr. was an offensive tackle out of Oregon that I did like. I think we had a 2nd-round grade on him. The Commanders went ahead and selected him at the end of the 1st round, so they really, really liked him. Probably very similar to how a lot of Packer fans feel about Jordan Morgan's selection last year. Probably a guy who's rated in the low 40s. They just went ahead and made him a late 1st-round pick. But he is a rookie, and he's going to have to go up against the likes of Parsons and Gary in this front. I do think that they'll probably, do some more what they did last week, maybe even a time or two more, and line Parsons up over the A gap and try to take advantage of Coleman and Biotish and some of those guys. So, Devontae Wyatt could also have another big game on the interior as well. So, again, we're going to have to try to contain, we'll see. I think, you might see Edrin Cooper almost be a little bit of a spy when he's not deployed as a blitzer, to try to, make sure that Jayden Daniels is contained. But those are some of the things I'm looking at on this side of the ball. Last week we did an excellent job of not allowing Jared Goff and that Lions team to pass deep over the top, which it builds off of a strength of ours last season. So if we can limit those big chunk plays down the field and keep things underneath, I do think we can have a lot of success versus this Washington Commanders team. So, the Commanders are, as you mentioned, Rob, on the older side. They are making some all-in moves themselves. In order to acquire Deebo, they had to give up a 5th-round pick. Gave up some draft capital to get Laramie Tunsil as well. So we'll see how long this window's open for the Washington Commanders, but they are a real football team right now. So kind of just injury report touch up here a little bit, and then we'll get on to some score predictions. But the Commanders overall are a very healthy football team right now. Really, they've got Samuel Cosme on the pup, which that does hurt a little bit. He's a pretty decent guard for them, which is why I think he talked about, some of those lower scores on the interior. So I don't expect him, he won't play if he's on the pup. He's ineligible this week. But really, Eckler and Noah Brown are the only other 2 guys on the Commanders injury report. But, with the Commanders having Krosky Merritt and Deebo Samuel, they're going to utilize those guys in the backfield. And Brown's kind of their 3rd wide receiver. So for the Packers in the injury report front, we already talked about the line. We'll see if Zach Tom and Aaron Banks can play. I think those are probably the 2 most concerning new injuries that we have on a short week. We'll look to see if we get our Nate Hobbs back. Sorry, having an early morning blink. He could really be a boon to this team, especially covering Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. And, not really concerned about Jaden Reed or too many of the other Packers injuries at this point in time. So, but Rob, let's give us your score prediction for this one. You got any fun predictions, or how do you see this one playing out tonight on Thursday Night Football?
Yeah, I think that the Commanders are going to be able to move the football. I think they're a really good offense with a really good quarterback. I feel like this one will be a lot closer than the domination of week 1 against the Lions. I do see the Packers winning 27-24. And if you're doing this from a betting perspective, you might want to buy a point down to 2.5 instead of the 3.5 for the Packers to be able to cover. So that's my prediction. I think that the defense, again, stands out, has some timely stops, some timely sacks on JAYDEN Daniels, ultimately as this game winds down. But it's a pretty close battle back and forth with both the Packers and the Commanders, with the Packers coming out on top.
We had similar score predictions last week. We're going similar again, but I'm giving the Packers a little bit more breathing room. I'm going with a 27-21 victory for the Green Bay Packers. I do think that this is a fairly high scoring affair. It's still week 2 though, but I do think that both of these defenses are upper half of the league defenses. So that's going to maybe handicap this game a little bit from getting into the 30s. I think maybe if this was a later matchup in the year, maybe you would see like a 31-28 kind of matchup, but I think the Packers will have a 27-21 lead. I'm predicting that the Commanders are going to try to have a late drive. JAYDEN Daniels is going to try to win it through the air, and the Packers defense does hold. So kind of a thriller on Thursday night. Jordan Love hasn't had a 200-yard passing game in his last 5 attempts. So I am going to predict that Jordan Love is going to let that ball sling a little bit more this week. He's going to have more than 250 passing yards. And I'm also predicting a small breakout game for Matthew Golden. I'm going to say that he's going to have like 4 receptions for 65 yards and his first official NFL touchdown. So a couple of extra little nuggets for you there. And that's all we got for you, Packers fans. I'm excited for this one. If the Packers come out of this 2-0, we're in a really good spot to start the season. We'll be back to more of a regular schedule next week, although Rob and I may mix in a guest or something like that. But you can expect some episodes from us on Wednesday and Saturday, anywhere that you can access that content: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So please make sure to hit that subscribe button, comment, let us know what you think. We love interacting with you all. You can connect with us on X. Rob's at Sounds Gouda with 3 A's, and I'm at Olson Jord. But until next time, Packers Nation, have a Gouda morning, a Gouda afternoon, and a Gouda night. Go Pack, go.
Go Pack.
Been wanted this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better.